Hello and welcome to another driving lesson. Defensive driving is driving to not crash, driving to defend your safety, being an active versus passive driver. A passive driver simply drives down the road, minds their own business, waits for things to happen, and then tries to react. A defensive driver is an active driver who anticipates issues before they happen and adjusts their vehicle speed, spacing, or timing for maximum safety. A defensive driver must never simply mind their own business. A defensive driver must judge many things like speeds, road conditions, drivers, and other road users to make the best decisions. Two of the most important elements of defensive driving are to look far ahead and to keep your eyes moving. Drivers who stare at the car in front or pavement in front of them of their front bumper have limited information. Looking as far ahead as you can see gives you more time to identify and react to potential problems up ahead, and you can still see the car ahead of you when you do so. It also tends to keep your vehicle nicely centered in your lane. When driving, we are a part of a moving picture, and it is a big picture that we need to be aware of. Cars and other road users never hold still. If we don't keep our eyes moving and keep track of what's going on around us in a full circle at all times, we won't have all the pieces in the puzzle, and we won't be able to make the best decisions for our safety. Check your mirrors every 5 to 8 seconds and scan the environment constantly to keep track of what's going on around you at all times. We are all driving alone in our vehicles, but we are all driving together on shared roads that we don't own. Driving is actually a team sport, and we need to understand our precise positioning within the team. We are a tiny piece together with a bunch of other tiny pieces, and we are all moving around together. And we are all trying to go different directions and to different places all at the same time. We are in an environment that is always changing, and we need to think about the big picture and not just the road right in front of us, because cars and other road users come from everywhere and they go everywhere. We need to notice the big picture because we are in the center of it in our world, and the actions of others can have a ripple effect on our environment. Something that is not our problem or not supposed to be our problem can quickly become our problem if other road users don't deal with it or drive correctly. And let's face it, it's a well-known fact that humans are imperfect by definition, so we need to always make space for the errors of ourselves and others because they are guaranteed to happen, and we don't need to have an attitude problem about it. We'll make mistakes and we can get over it. We can still get from A to B in one piece, even with our imperfections. We don't all need to drive around thinking we are better than one another. We are all just trying to get somewhere. Another key element is to make sure you have some kind of extra space around your vehicle at all times. This is called an escape route. It is space that you know where it is, should you need it, and you're going to need it because of the same reason I just mentioned. People aren't always going to do what they're supposed to do, and they aren't always going to make a safe decision. The only space we can control the most is the one right in front of our vehicle, since we can't control what the cars behind us or beside us are doing. So if you find you have no space anywhere else, then leave more space in front of you. If the car behind you is driving too close to you and you leave extra space in front of you, you can use that space to slow down more gradually when you see the traffic in front of you is stopping. The car behind you will be forced to slow down gradually with you. This can help you avoid being rear-ended if you need to stop and the driver behind is too close and not paying attention. And if the driver still isn't paying attention, don't be afraid to honk. They don't actually want to crash into you. When driving, avoid driving in another car's blind spot. People should be shoulder checking before lane changing, but they may or may not do it. Why put yourself into a position where you know another driver cannot see your entire vehicle unless they go to the effort to shoulder check? If you put your car into a position where you know the other driver can see you in their mirror, it is so much better all around. You aren't in the blind spot, but you also can create the escape route space. If you are driving beside a space and not a car, then you've created some kind of space. We have to pass through the blind spots when driving, just don't stay in that area, especially when driving beside large trucks who may not know you exist at all. It is hard to have a crash with another car if you are always surrounded by space. And this can be difficult, of course, in busy cities and areas. Speaking of space, cars are like wolves and travel in packs due to traffic lights. If you drive at a speed around the speed limit, the pack will probably pass you because the most packs are speeding nowadays. Then you'll be driving all by yourself on the road, and it will be mighty difficult to have a crash with another car if there are no other cars around. But we can always think of the positioning of our car and try to make it strategic and not random. Which brings me to the next point, which is to make sure other people can see you. People don't traditionally crash into other cars that they know existed. They crash into stuff that they didn't see, that they didn't know was there. And why didn't they know it was there? I've heard people say a car came out of nowhere. But cars always come from somewhere, not nowhere. You always come from somewhere when you drive, don't you? That means everyone else does too. You just can't always see them because our vision can be blocked by something in our environment. If people crash into something they didn't see, it means their position or their timing wasn't good enough to make a safe decision, but they did it anyway. They failed to see or they failed to anticipate. A classic collision example is when 2 lanes of traffic stop for another driver who is attempting to turn left, and the left-turning driver simply turns, assuming that the 3rd lane is clear. But just because 2 lanes have stopped doesn't magically mean that the other lane is clear. It just means that these drivers are trying to avoid blocking intersections in busy situations as is recommended. And how is the driver in the 3rd lane expected to see anything? Their vision would be naturally blocked by the other vehicles. They would just be thinking that they selected a lucky lane, not knowing that actually a collision may be imminent. And how paranoid should we be when we are simply driving up the road like that? Should we come to a complete stop every time we have no visibility? It's a good question, isn't it? Left-turning drivers should not turn until they actually know the other lanes are clear by having good visibility, or by waiting until they can actually see the vehicle in the 3rd lane is stopping too. If they don't know, then they should simply not turn left. Don't know means don't go. Making sure other people see you isn't always easy, but there are certain things you can do and certain things you can look for when you're driving. Your car has a horn and you shouldn't be afraid of using it. It doesn't need to be associated with anger or any other emotion. You can quickly honk your horn if you're in a situation where you know there's another driver or road user who may not be able to see you. It simply tells them you exist. It says, "I'm here," and I guarantee you people would like to know you exist rather than suddenly crashing into you because they didn't know you were a thing. You can also look for eye contact from other road users and other drivers. If you're driving along and you see a car coming up the side street that has a stop sign at the end, that driver should be stopping and yielding to you. But are they going to? If they are looking at you, which they kind of should be, then you can relax a little bit because they're not likely to look at you and then crash into you. People don't do that. I mean, not usually. If, however, the driver is not looking at you, then you may have a potential problem. For whatever reason, the driver isn't looking where they should be looking. And that would be a good time to honk the horn if it looks like they aren't going to stop. Or get ready to honk your horn by getting your hand in position. New drivers would often tend to slam on the brakes in this situation, but that might result in a rear-end collision. It's much easier to honk and ask the person who should be stopping to do their part. Another thing to think about is lane changing. It's what cars do, and it can be helpful to assume that every driver wants to do a lane change, especially after a turn. If a driver turns right and continues to turn right, they'll be driving in a circle or a square. Same thing with a left turn. If someone turns left a bunch of times, they'd be driving in a circle all day. And most people don't want to drive in circles. Drivers generally get places by alternating left turns and right turns. This naturally requires lane changing. And while lane changing is a separate skill that of course drivers need to know how to do, you can leave space for the vehicles around you to change lanes. You can assume that if a car has just turned right, that it will then want to turn left at some point. Maybe it will be sooner or maybe it will be later. But how easy is it to leave space and position for another car to lane change? It's pretty easy. It will be a safer environment around your car because you won't need to change your position. You'll already be in the perfect position. So in conclusion, the key elements of defensive driving are to look as far as you can see, keep your eyes moving all the time, leave yourself some escape route space at all times, make sure other people know you exist by looking for eye contact and honking when necessary, and get the big picture to make safe decisions, and also to anticipate the movements of others, such as lane changing. Look far ahead and anticipate the movements of others. People are predictable. Most people don't want to wait for another car to turn left. Most people don't want to wait behind a bus that has stopped at a bus stop. People are naturally impatient. When I'm driving, I'm living in the moment, and I try to be present and focus on what I see and what I'm doing. And I think about driving, which is not always easy being a human being. I don't care whose fault anything is, who's right, who's wrong. I don't care. My goal is to get there in one piece and get there safely and get there where I'm going without touching another car or another road user. And I'll do whatever I have to do to make that happen. The other thing I do is I think of everything from everyone else's point of view and not just mine. Since I am part of this big picture, I need to consider if I move my car to the left or right, it's going to affect everything around me, potentially. You may notice if you move into a left turn lane, the car to the right of you may do a lane change immediately. And that may make another car to the right of that do a right turn out of a parking lot or another lane change. So everything you do can affect everyone around you. So you need to think about it from everyone's point of view and think, how are my movements going to affect all these other cars and all these other people? Because they do and they will. And whenever I move my car and then someone else moves their car because of my movement, it can end up affecting my own safety. As soon as I put my left turn signal on, the car behind me often does a lane change because they are not patient and they think that my left turn is going to slow them down and make their day so much longer. What you can do if the car in front of you turns their left turn signal on, instead of automatically thinking you need to do a lane change so you don't get stuck behind this left turn, why don't you look far ahead up the road and see what the car in front of you might see? And you may not be able to see exactly what he sees, but if you look up the road and you see there's only one oncoming car coming up the road, then you can kind of guess that this car will turn left pretty soon because he only has one car to wait for. That is an example of getting the big picture instead of just seeing the turn signal and freaking out thinking you have to do a lane change like I see a lot of people do when I'm out there driving. So by looking at the situation from other people's point of view, you can get clues and you can make better decisions about what you are going to do with your car. Amen.